Troublesome times are here, filling his hearts with fear. Freedom we all hold dear, now it's at stake. Humbling your heart to God, safe from the chastening rod. Seek the way pilgrims try, Christians always. Jesus is coming, morning or night or noon, many will meet there.
Good morning. It is good to see everyone out this morning. Let me remind you of a couple of things. Number one, pray for Brother Cantrell. Yesterday I talked to him. He wasn't feeling all that well, but he was going to preach today anyhow. Let's keep on praying for Josh. And let's not forget, our brothers will meet this coming Saturday, the 1st, at 9 a.m. Saturday at 9 a.m., brothers will come together as we begin to resume our meetings. And our gospel meeting, of course, is October the 16th through the 19th with Brother Jeremy Green. And we are looking to do three things: return, rebuild, and restore. We have had a very long 2 years of the pandemic. It's about time for us to begin to rebuild again. We thank God that we have been able to meet every Sunday since the pandemic. And we thank God for that. And we appreciate our elders for allowing us to do so. And we have done well. As you have noticed, we have had 3 services each Sunday, one at 9, 11, and 6, because of the pandemic. It's coming time for us to resume our Bible classes. We're just trying to get the right time ready so that we can start that over again. Today we want to talk about marriage, because we believe we have two special people here today who are celebrating almost 100 years of marriage. Oh, not that much, but almost 100 years. We'll recognize them later on in our services today. And our lesson, of course, is coming from 1 Corinthians chapter 7. There are times when we have to ask some questions, and we believe they are relevant questions. What is your marriage like today? Do you have a strong home base? And let's take a brief look at some verses from the book of Proverbs and see how we can learn from them. In Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 13, I believe it says, "A merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of heart the spirit is broken." When we look at today's homes, of course, we see that instead of joy in the home, there is sorrow. And we must agree that there are many contributing factors. Therefore, there has to be something missing, and we hope we can produce that today. In many homes, instead of peace, there is affliction. You look at Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 15. The Bible says, "All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he that is of a merry heart hath a continual feast." How does he expect us in these troublesome times to have a merry heart? Friends, our Christianity does not depend upon circumstances, but on the fact that Jesus Christ is Lord of our lives and the center of our homes. So in many homes, of course, instead of peace, there is affliction. And instead of tranquility, there is trouble. Look at verse 16 of the same chapter. "Better is little with the fear of the Lord than a great treasure and trouble therewith." We have to make some choices these days. What do we want? We're all looking to be rich. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when it disturbs our Christianity, when it removes Christ, then we have lost more than we have gained. In many homes, instead of love, there is hatred. But listen what the wise man says in verse 17. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therewith. I don't want to get into that, because even though there's some good scriptures there. And sometimes instead of harmony, there is strife. Verse 18 of our text. He says, a wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. Instead of satisfaction, there is disappointment. In verse 22, without counsel, purposes are disappointed. But in the multitude of counselors, they're established. Instead of satisfaction, there's disappointment. Does any of these words ever describe your marriage or your home life? Is your home a contented one? During a marriage ceremony, I might say these words. Love is perhaps the most overused and least understood word in any language. But what is its essence? We're talking about love. Because you see, to love without condition means selfless reaching out, a giving up, putting the other person first. See, love forgives, and it doesn't look back. Love holds on, and it doesn't give up. Love doesn't measure past faults. Love stands up and braces against the challenges of life. Love is strong. Love is soft. Remember Wednesday night we talk about grace. And when we talk about grace, we understand grace to be a favor, unmerited favor. But from the word grace, we have graceful. Look at that word graceful, how we approach everything, and see how much less stress is in our lives. See how we face each day different and even better because of the gracefulness with which we approach life and situations in life. We're talking about marriage. Love is amazing when you feel it flowing out, and overpowering when it comes in like a tide. Yes, a good marriage, we say, must be created. It doesn't come automatically. It has to be work involved. Listen, in marriage, the little things are the big things. You see, we wait until the big things happen and then we can't handle it. However, if we look at the little things, deal with them. Remember this thought for a minute. Everything is not a problem. We make problems out of situations that develop. There's always going to be some situation. But when we let that situation turn into a problem, sometimes it's too late to turn back. But we need to let it be a situation, let it be a disagreement. And people can have disagreements without it becoming a problem. Listen. It is never too old to hold hands. We're talking about marriage now, never too old to hold hands. And when you come together, you're not 10 feet or 20 feet in front of the other. You can come in together. It's all right. You don't have to tell us you have been fighting in the car. We know that by the distance that there is between you two. Just leave that stuff out. We can see some things. Remember, marriage, it is at no time taking the other for granted. The courtship should not end with the honeymoon. That should continue throughout life. And don't misunderstand me. We got some children in here, don't we? Okay, so I got to limit what I say. Because when we think of honeymoon, we have to think in terms of closeness, of intimacy. That doesn't necessarily mean to the other thing. You know what I'm talking about? Listen. It should continue down through the years. It is having a mutual sense of values and common objectives. It is forming a circle of love that gathers in the whole family. Listen, it is doing things for each other, not in the attitude of duty or service, but in the spirit of joy. When something becomes a duty, it is boring. It doesn't last long. But when it becomes a matter of love and appreciation, believe me, it continues. No matter what the other person does, I'm a Christian. Therefore, I have to act as a Christian all the time because I love my Jesus and he loves me. And he wants me to demonstrate this love in my family. Listen, it is not looking for perfection in each other. It's not going to be there. But listen to some words that I often use. It is cultivating flexibility, patience, understanding, and a sense of humor. Listen, if you do not know how to laugh at yourself, somebody will do it for you. So you better learn how to laugh at yourself. Everything is not that serious. You understand? I'm talking about marital love this morning. It's all right. It's all right, brothers, to pinch her in the posterior and run. Laugh about it. It doesn't have to be an angry moment. We got to learn how to put humor into a marriage. We talk about flexibility. What a word. I often use this word in premarital counseling to teach us what flexibility is. Let me see if I can help you. Have you ever seen a porcupine? Have you ever seen a porcupine? Who has seen a porcupine? Have you ever wondered how they mate? Does the she porcupine get rid of all her pricks? No. But they learn how to adapt. If porcupines can adapt, why can't we learn to love one another and appreciate one another, understanding each other? And the reason why we don't is because we don't know who we are. And we don't appreciate who we are. Who are you this morning? Do you know who you are? Let me help you understand who you are. Just think for a moment. And if you even have a piece of paper, just take that paper and put a line down the middle. And put all the negative and the positive traits of your mama and your daddy. Then look at that paper again and read it. You know who that is? That's me. That's me. I'm a product of my mother and my father. I came from them. And the things that are negative and positive, I get from them. But listen what I don't do. I do not criticize my mom and my dad. They did the best they could. Now I'm learning better. I can do better. But I never criticized my mom and my dad. They did the best that they could under the circumstances, without education, without ever attending a premarital class or any class at all. Now I have privileges. I can do better. Do you know? According to psychology, as we have showed it before, take a look at your children. Look at them carefully, because you're going to learn something. Whatever negative traits you have, the children have it 25% worse. Whatever positive traits you have, the children have it 25% better. We're never the same like our parents. And our children will never be the same as us. So when we get into marriage and realize I am imperfect, then I'm learning some lessons that I can teach my children. Listen, so we got to learn flexibility. We got to find room for the things of the Spirit in our lives. It is a common search for the good and the beautiful. We talk about marriage, a common search for the good and the beautiful. If you can only see the negative in your spouse, you are blind as a bat. You're looking too far. Look closer. But when you consider that you come to this marriage with your own problems and burdens, then you realize, so did my mate. We are imperfect creatures. It is not my job to change him or her, but it is my job to adapt. Adapt doesn't mean change, but it results in change when we are honest with ourselves. You got to learn how to adapt, folks, or else life will be miserable. Marriage, it is establishing a relationship in which the independence is equal, dependence is mutual, and obligation gives and takes. Listen, it is discovering what marriage can be at its best. You know, we use some words sometimes that really don't belong at first. As psychologists want to tell us that the only way that we can have a successful marriage is if we are together. And if we believe the same things, do the same things, they are wrong and they're lying. We all begin marriage out here. And for the rest of our lives, we are trying to come together, and we may succeed and we may not. But wherever we are when we die, we are still together. Listen, in marriage, we are standing together to face the world. We got to remember who the enemy is. The enemy is not my husband, it's not my wife, but it's the world outside. And when we allow the world outside to get into our business, trouble abounds. Yes. Marriage, it is speaking words of appreciation, demonstrating gratitude in thoughtful ways. It is having the capacity to forgive and to forget. It is giving each other an atmosphere in which each can grow. Listen, my wife, it took a long time to find that out, but it is true. My wife will never be me. Neither can I be hers. Why? We come from different parents, maybe the same background, but we're not the same. We did not grow up with the same conditioning. We don't have each other's genes. So consider those things when you try to change. One of the questions I have on premarital counseling is this. Tell me, and some folks fall into it, what changes do you plan to make in your spouse? And some folk, without thinking, start saying, well, I need to change this and change that. And I ask them, are you planning on changing yourself first? Are you planning to make some changes in yourself? Oh, yes, I asked a question just to see what folks are thinking. And oh, they have plans. I got plans for her. She got plans for him. What she want to make him, what he wants to make her. You can't even make your children like you. Yet you're trying to bring some stranger in and try to make them like you. Lord have mercy. It is a common search, as we said, for the good and the beautiful. It is not only marrying the right person, it is being the right partner. Our society is inundated from so many different directions with sights and songs and activities destined to fracture the bulwark of marriage. We need to understand that the world doesn't want us to have a good marriage. They want us to fight. They want us to break up. They want to sever that relationship. But if you don't want it, it's not going to happen. You have to want it. Many have tried and are still trying to define what constitutes a marriage. And so therefore there are shows that are bent and glorify extramarital activities. Listen, there are shows like Desperate Housewives, Wife Swap, and all those kind of things. Have we now become so desensitized of this type of activity that it ceases to be sinful and starts to be funny? Who are we kidding? Who are we kidding? Look at the temptations around us. We talk about pornography. It is a $57 billion industry. And to put it in perspective, 260 nations reported their GNP. The amount each nation earned, so to speak, the pornography industry earned more than 169 of those 260 nations, meaning that 47 nations had a higher GNP than the porn industry. Oh, I wish we just had time to deal with that. Satan knows, listen, Satan knows that the collapse of marital relationship will mean the collapse of the family, community, the church, and the nation. Satan knows that. And he is hell-bent on making sure that families fall apart, that nations crumble, that the church no longer is strong. Listen, Christians must be aware of this enemy's diabolic objective toward the relationship of couples. We must consider the enemy through more intensified praying and family devotions. Personal or family, spend more time together. Pray together. Spend more time, and the more time you spend together, the less time Satan has in trying to get through us. Listen. We must counter the enemy through more praying, devotions, deepening a personal relationship with God, strengthening Christian values in our individual lives, and better orientation of the biblical paradigm of marriage. But how do we strengthen and keep the sweetness and intimacy of a couple relationship? How could this happen? Let us consider Paul's advice concerning marital relationship in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 3 through 5. He said, the husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. In other words, not to somebody else. Not to somebody else. You know what we're talking about. I just don't want to get too plain with it because we're going to get some kids. For the wife does not have the authority over her own body, but the husband. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. And he says in verse 5, do not deprive one another except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that he may devote yourself to prayer, but then come together again so that Satan may not tempt you because of the lack of self-control. Listen. The Apostle Paul is writing to the church at Corinth. In the city of Corinth, we got to understand a couple of things here. You see, Corinth is a commercial city during Paul's time. Prostitution and sexual immorality were prevalent in that city. For that matter, the temple of Diana alone employed thousands of prostitutes. Sex is a part of their worship services. So this newly established church in Corinth was exposed to such immoral environment, and Paul saw its potential to become a big problem. Paul advised the married couple to make their relationship enjoyable and fulfilling so that the temptation to commit immorality would be prevented. Listen. So what do you mean by enjoyable and fulfilling relationship? I'm glad that you asked. That both enjoy both the presence and the company of his mate. Make it your business to travel together as much as you could. It is not good for you to travel alone and stay overnight in some hotel. Your thoughts begin to wander. Ooh. That's why when we travel together. It is so comforting. It is so beautiful. And of course, I told you, my wife is the best traveling companion you could find. Best. As soon as we leave the house, get in the car, and the car start rocking, whoo, she's gone. She's gone. She's going to sleep. Oh, what a beautiful companion. But the point is, she is there. That's what's beautiful. She is there. You can look at her sleeping and laugh your head off. What are you laughing at? I said, I need to take me a tape recorder. Yeah. So I could remind you what you were like when you were sitting on the other side of me. What do you mean by fulfilling and enjoyable? Both of you have to say, I enjoy being in the presence of my wife. Listen. You're always going to have something to disagree with. It don't have to be a fight. So what if she differs? So what if I differ? Why should that be a fight? We're grown folks. We're supposed to know that somebody is disagreeing with me. It's okay. It makes me stronger. It should anyway. It's all right. The beautiful thing about my wife is this. Even though she's asleep, as soon as we get to the city, she knows exactly when I'm lost. How does she know that I'm lost? And I'm never going to say I'm lost. She said, you're lost, don't you? I said, no, I'm just trying to explore the city. And we laugh for the rest of the time. We laugh for the rest of the time. You got to learn how to say some things. Like, I don't like to wash dishes, but sometimes I do. But my wife does not like me to wash dishes. Because with that soap in my hand, something is going to break. Something is going to drop. And when it drops and it breaks, I go into the bedroom and said, you broke a plate yesterday, and then you put it in the sink for me to wash. And she looked at me with that eye, and we start laughing because just two of us in the house. If she didn't break it, then I did. You got to learn how to create situations that you can laugh at each other. Even some serious situation, learn how to laugh. Everything is not a fight. Come on. So we got to say, I love to be in your presence. Literally being entertained. See, I get to enjoy my wife. You don't know the way I know her. And I hope she's not listening to this sermon, because I'm going to have to give account for using her in my sermon today. And I hope some of you, let me look at you, your faces, don't tell my wife what I say. I'm going to deny everything with a smile. All right. We got to learn how to be satisfied. Say to yourself, I made the right choice. You got to be able to say, despite what happened, I made the right choice. And I've got to live with this choice, but I'm going to make the best of it for the rest of my life. It all depends upon me to make it right. So Paul's admonition to this family or to families, you got to make your relationship enjoyable and fulfilling. Look at verse 3 of 1 Corinthians 7. There are some mutual duties within marriage. The word or the words due benevolence means debt, to render what is due. To render what is due. So when I decide to get married, there are some things I'm going to owe my wife and she's going to owe me. But listen carefully. It's not for me to demand them. It's for me to give what I owe. And when I do that, as a husband, you cannot begin to imagine how your wife has been looking at you all these years, expecting you to provide the leadership in everything. Brothers, we got to provide the leadership in humor, provide the leadership in everything. They're waiting for us to do that. And when we fulfill that role, it is just pleasant sometimes. Most of the times that is. So the husband and wife owe some things to each other. And the word render means continuous action, even after the honeymoon. So let us for a minute look at God's plan for marriage. What is God's plan for marriage? Number one, first of all, to understand God's plan for marriage, you must understand that, listen, it is a place where we learn about commitment. That's the word that's missing so often. A place where we learn commitment. This is not just a contract. This is a commitment. This is something I agree with God with, that I am going to do this for the rest of my life with this person. That I am committed to this person and this person alone. Alone. You notice something, brothers and sisters? When you come from somewhat poor beginnings, and at that time when you were a kid, nobody wanted you. But as soon as you get married and start looking good, here comes the temptation. Some girl that you used to know when you were young, who didn't pay you any attention, comes around and says, ooh, honey. Pay no attention. Too late. Their days are gone. It's over. And sometimes, if you do not have enough self-esteem, you feel so good that you want to run behind that person. Watch out. That's temptation for you. True, don't forget where you come from. But at the same time, remember, when you were down there, they didn't want to see you. Now you are somebody special. They want you now. You go home, look at your wife and say, honey, thank God for you. Thank God for you. She is the one, Brother Coven, who took you when even your mama didn't want to see you. Mama wanted to get rid of you so bad, you was such trouble at home. Mama wanted to find anybody to marry you. Ooh, mercy. I love this topic. The second thing we need to understand about God's plan for marriage, number 2, it is a place where we learn forgiveness and grace. You understand? Where we learn forgiveness and grace. Some things are going to happen. Brothers, listen. There are some things you better learn right now. You don't have the last word. You don't have the last word. Let me teach you some things this morning, if you don't mind. Don't mind. Some things, brothers, might be clear in your head. They are just like a simple arithmetic. 1 plus 2, or 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's plain as ever. But I want you to know that with your wife, it's not so plain. Because one of those ones could be crooked. So it's no longer 1 plus 1 equals 2. You see, women and men think differently. As psychologists tell us, and we believe, when a girl is born, like everyone else, we have 2 sides of brains. And we grow up with those 2 sides until a certain time where the girl, her brains come together to be one. 2 sides be one. With the men, they stay separated. Women, let me show you something. Your husband could just have cussed you out and want to go to bed with you a few minutes later. 2 sides of brain. On the other hand, brothers, if you hurt the fingernail of your wife, you hurt the whole body. The whole person is hurt. You hear that, Brother Phelps? So you don't hurt any part of her because you start crying. You don't love her no more. It's like so many commercials you see. 2 people go to bed at night. The husband is sleeping. The wife wakes him up. Honey, you still love me? He's sleeping. He's sleeping. Leave him alone. But it is to show what we think. We both see love differently. It is all right. And I try to show young people, especially when they get into marriage or get into marriage, this is what happens, folks. Listen. Every boy, for the most part, is trained to be a man. Every girl is trained to be a wife and a mother. She looks at her mother, who shows her how to be a wife and a mother. And all we husbands do is try to tell the boy, you ought to be a man. And so here comes the wife, has to teach him how to be a husband. It's amazing how God equalizes things. The wife teaches us how to be husbands. But most times we're not listening. We are hard-headed. We're hard-headed. So we got to learn from each other. But remember what we have just said. Marriage is a place where we learn forgiveness and grace. Learn how to deal with each other gracefully. Oh, Brothers, listen to this. One of our jobs is to protect. Against whom? Against what? The two biggest enemies that our wives have. Themselves and us. We have to protect them against me and against her. Because when she starts crying, she's going to blame herself for everything she didn't do. And I have to say, honey, no, that's not true. I love you. I care about you. It's not about doing everything right. It's about living for Christ and loving each other. In the process of doing so, we're going to make mistakes with each other. We're going to say the wrong things. Ooh, wrong things. Here's another secret. I'm just trying to help us. Another secret you learned after 50-something years. I told you already, brothers in particular, you need to incorporate in your vocabulary two special words. You remember them? Mm-hmm and mm-mm. You better learn them. If you don't learn them, you're going to be in trouble, because if you answer everything she says, she's going to come back at you and say, how do you know the answer? I'm just talking. Learn how to listen without responding. We have a habit of planning an answer before we hear the last of the conversation. So then, guess what happens? And she asked me how I think. I have not heard a thing she said, but I have an answer. And I'm ready. She's going to say, you need to go to the doctor. And you're going to say, oh, it's all right, honey. And you know it's not all right. I'm not talking about you, brother. I'm not talking about you at all. But the point I'm trying to make is marriage can be beautiful. It really can be. Listen, let me cut this thing short. We have to learn how to show, how to love one another. The third thing we need to understand about God's plan for marriage is that it is a place where we can learn how to give honor. And that's something else. Do you know how difficult, brothers, how difficult it is to go out on the job and work 8 hours and return home and work another 8? I don't do that. Neither do you. But your wife does. And she's supposed to be the weaker vessel. She does. Most times, when she starts complaining about the work, it is not about the work. It's about your lack of appreciation and attention. Just simple. She will continue to do the same work she was doing if you show your appreciation. Give her the attention she needs. You go to work every day, and that lady who is working across from you, you look at her with a smile all day long, and you go home and there's a frown on your face. And she's thinking, what have I done wrong this time? Because you didn't return with a pleasant smile. Again, I'm just talking about the simple things. Men, listen, men. It doesn't matter whether your wife has had a hysterectomy or not. She still goes through the same things when she is seeing that time of the month. And at the time of the month, sometimes you don't want to talk to anybody. You have to know that time. You got to learn how to know her. Know that time, and only you have the power to make a difference. Yes. Go get some flowers. Do something special. She's at work. When she left home, she was angry. She goes to work and she's angry. But you send some flowers and had it on her desk. And the other workers come around. Who sent that? My husband. All of a sudden the attitude changes. Not because of those flowers, but because of your thoughts. You are thinking about her all the time. All the time. After so many years, I ran out of ideas as to what to give my wife for a present. I may have told you this before. One day, I just didn't know what else to buy. So I think I went to, I think it was Winn-Dixie. I went to Winn-Dixie, got a little basket, and I bought one pear, one peach, one banana, and just one of each, and took them home, put on the table. The lady laughed herself to death. She said it was not what was in the basket, was the thought that I just do something for her to not to eat, but to enjoy the moment. To say that her husband was thinking of her. See, after 50-something years, you run out of ideas. You run out of ideas. You got to start. Never stop thinking. Never make your wife feel that her life is ended because you don't care anymore. Life is precious. Learn how to enjoy. Find something new every day. Every day you wake up, there's something new. Ask how she is doing. In that wedding ceremony, I asked, turn to the groom and say to him, will you love her, comfort her, honor and keep her in sickness and in health, forsaking all others, and keep yourself only to her as long as you both shall live? Then you ask the bride the same question. Here you promise to love each other. The fourth thing we need to understand about God's plan for marriage is that it is a place where we experience joy and passion. You see, when you value something, you treat it with special care. You handle it gentle. Maybe we ought to just listen for a minute to what Percy Sledge says. When a man loves a woman, can't keep his mind on nothing else. He trade the world for the good thing he's found. If she is bad, he can't see it. She can do no wrong. And turn his back on his friends if he puts her down. When a man loves a woman, spend his last dime and trying to hold on to what he needs. He'll give up all his comforts and sleep out in the rain if she said that's the way it ought to be. When a man loves a woman, he said, I give you everything I've got, trying to hold on to your precious love. And baby, please don't treat me bad. When a man loves a woman deep down in the soul, she can bring him such misery if she's playing him for a fool. He's the last one to know. Loving eyes can never see. Yes, when a man loves a woman, I know exactly how he feels. When a man loves a woman, every woman is looking for a man like that who loves her. Are you that man? Are you that man who loves that woman God has blessed you with? Listen, many women purchase Tupperware for storage because they can bang it, they can bop it, they can leave it lying around where children could play with them. But those glass or breakable dishes are kept in the china cabinet where children cannot play with them. They are valuable and are treated with special care. You treat them with honor. You handle them with care. That's how we are to treat each other in marriage. Again, the fourth thing, as we said, Got to learn how to handle, or rather, marriage is a place where we experience joy and passion. If our marriage relationship is to be a reflection of our relationship with God, there must be joy and passion. Maybe we ought to take a look at our Christianity. Is there joy and passion? Do you sometimes want to find yourself singing, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see." And then you say, "Thank you, Jesus, for being so good to me. Thank you, Lord." Listen. God has given us many great gifts. Our God is a God of passion. He is our heavenly lover. He loves us with great passion. His passion is full of joy and laughter. He is fun. He shares his humor with us. You cannot love God insipidly, for God is a ravenous lover. If your relationship with God is dull, you do not have a relationship with the right God. He's exciting and full of life. But what are the requirements of marriage? You see, marriage is something that requires constant love and attention. It demands flexibility, forgiveness, and fortitude. Unfortunately, as we look out around us in the Lord's church, we come across too many men, too many husbands who have given up their roles. But if we are not carefully investing in our marriage, our homes that were once filled with burning love and passion become cold and crusty houses. And I'm sure that that's not a want. One of the biggest tragedies in the home is when the husband fails to take the spiritual lead that God commands. Sometimes there's some reasons for that, but time won't permit us to give you those reasons. So when somebody is celebrating their relationship, their marriage, it ought to be a moment of joy for everyone. Every one of us are to rejoice with that couple. What about the spiritual aspect? Oh, time is gone already. Let me pause here and say, marriage is from God. It is beautiful, or it can be beautiful. It's up to us to make it beautiful. Make it easier for one another to love us. Create an environment within yourself to say that I am lovable. And when you create that, it's easy. It is true to say that whether my wife loves me or not is not the condition that God gives me. I have to love her anyhow. But if she creates an atmosphere of love, it is so easy. It is so easy. The same way for me, if I create an atmosphere in which she can love and be herself and enjoy life, it's so easy for her. That's the reason why I tell you that she's the most blessed woman in the world. Didn't I tell you that? But you don't believe me, do you? Been trying to tell my brothers that, but they won't believe me. But seriously, we're trying to help us make our marriage great, greater than it is, better than it is. I'm not suggesting that you don't have a good one, but you can have a better one. Enjoy each other's company. Take advantage of it. Listen. Some of the funniest moments with my wife, they're just simple. We're going out to eat, okay? I ask, what do you feel like eating? I don't know. We're driving. Where do you want us to go? I don't know. So I said, let's go to Habakkuk. No, I thought you didn't know. So I've got to go until I find one where she says, it's okay. But I know this all the time. In my mind, I already got the one I'm going to. But I can't tell her that. She's going to say no. Until we get there. You got to learn your spouse so much. You ought to know what's coming next. Because we are creatures of habit. You know that. You know that. Habit. But first of all, God wants to be in your life. Let him in. No one can take the place of God. Not your husband, not your children, no one. So you put God in your life, you believe in his son, you repent of all your sins, confess the name of Christ, and be baptized and begin the journey. I guarantee you, if you live with Christ, you'll be a better husband and a better wife and a better mother and a better father, a better sister, a better brother. You'll be better all the way around. So today we extend an invitation to you. Why don't you come as together we stand and sing an invitation.
Been to Jesus for the cleansing power. Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusting in his grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul-cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?